In this segment, we'll look at the permeating social justice drivel that has now found a home in Major League Baseball. Now, we are well aware of similar efforts in the NFL, with the Redskins changing their name to simply the Washington Football Team, and now with the approval of social justice messages to be used on various parts of a player's uniform. As a reminder, this is the same league that not too long ago was so anal about their uniforms that D'Angelo Williams, a running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the time, was not allowed to wear pink accessories to honor his mother who perished from breast cancer because pink was not one of the standard colors of the Steelers. We've also heard that social justice messages will be displayed on the hardwood in the NBA. Now, the formerly apolitical MLB is the latest pro sports league to fall victim to the mob efforts. Thursday, July 23rd, marked the opening of the shortened 2020 MLB season. It was a marquee matchup between the defending World Series champion Washington Nationals and the always intriguing and series contending New York Yankees. It was also a must-see pitching matchup between Max Scherzer of the Nats and newcomer Garrett Cole for the Yanks. But the opener, which would eventually be shortened by a monstrous rainstorm, was kicked off by a Black Lives Matter demonstration. As you can see here, while the teams did not kneel for the anthem, they all rose to attention in unison in time for this actual anthem to start playing. And every player knelt while viewing a BLM-endorsed message displayed on the giant screen in the outfield. In addition, BLM was painted on the back of the pitcher's mound in every opening game in full view of the camera for every pitch. As you can see, when asked about the different efforts for social justice causes, including the kneeling, Aaron Judge said, "We've got a lot of guys in this clubhouse with different beliefs, different feelings, different walks of life, and from different countries. And we want to respect all that, and as a team, we came to the decision to kneel right before the anthem," end quote. Nationals reliever Sean Doolittle added that the moment was, quote, "powerful." However, in subsequent games, we found out that a couple Yankees did kneel for the anthem. But what was interesting in the politically driven opening weekend for the MLB was that contrary to Aaron Judge's statement, not all views were respected. San Fransisco Giants pitcher Sam Coonrad was the only player in his opening series of games to stand during the anthem. He cited his religious beliefs and traditional values that ran in opposition to several prominent points of the current iteration of BLM, including a much less transparent Marxist agenda and the targeted destruction of the traditional nuclear family. However, for his efforts and really rather thorough explanation, Coonrad was eviscerated by the national sports media for his blaspheming of the BLM religion. Sports Illustrated said he lacked courage, even though he was the only player not cudgeled into acting according to a certain political agenda. As you can see here, NBCSports.com published a piece titled, "Giants' Sam Coonrod had every right to stand, but his reason fell short." NBC Sports said that while Coonrad had every right to stand, his reasons did fall short, and in this ridiculous screed, the writer says that Coonrad had no legitimate religious-based rationale for standing during the anthem, because Christianity should not be in conflict with racial equality. Moreover, it's contended in the piece that the kneeling was not synonymous with support for BLM in particular, but only racial equality in general. Here you see, quote, "But if Coonrad had taken a moment to inform himself, he would see motive behind this movement need not be affiliated with BLM, but rather to bring greater awareness to the racial injustices that is its focus." But however, this piece, and I think purposely, obfuscates the point in contending that the kneeling for the anthem and the showing deference for the message is not necessarily associated with Black Lives Matter. But we know from a few very obvious points the league certainly was heavy-handed in its addressing of these social justice causes and really Black Lives Matter agenda in particular, that this really is a purposeful obfuscation on the part of NBC Sports and others, such as Sports Illustrated. It really amounts to actually a flat-out lie. The demonstration had everything to do with BLM. The message on the giant screens expressly mentioned the group. The fields were branded with a giant BLM logo on the back of the pitcher's mound so that the camera could catch it with every view of every pitch. And even the players' jerseys had a special patch dedicated to Black Lives Matter. So to say that kneeling, especially in this context, shouldn't be synonymous with support for Black Lives Matter is either purposely dense or really incredibly ignorant. Given the fact that this piece does not mention Coonrad's own statement, aside from a simple 3-word sentence that he's, quote, says, quote, "I'm a Christian." Further, the piece gives no attention to that very basic Christian morals are in complete conflict with the destruction of the nuclear family, as Coonrad actually did state. To say that the kneeling at the opening series of the MLB season was simply support for racial equality en masse and not in allegiance to Black Lives Matter is incredulous to the point of being politically motivated. No doubt this vapid sentiment will be repeated should Coonrad or any other player choose to stand in this manner, really regardless of their rationale, but especially if they cite something like traditional values of Christianity or something of the like. Because according to the mainstream sports media, there is no legitimate basis for disagreement with their agenda. As you can see later on in the piece, the conclusion is thus, quote, "There were only 2 rational explanations for what Coonrad said. 1, he didn't hear himself speak. Or 2, he heard every word he said and knows he did not say what he really meant," end quote. But this, of course, leaves out a third explanation for what he did. That he's correct about his valuation of Black Lives Matter and its opposition to his values, and that the league, with the assistance of the national sports media, is badgering its players into submission in order to support a political agenda. Here's a little segment from Clay Travis's program, Outkick Coverage. Clay does a really good job on his show. I listen every now and again. He's recently partnered up with Jason Whitlock, who is formerly over on Fox Sports on the TV side of things, but they're newly partnered up over at Outkick, and they discussed the Sam Coonrad standing and some of the broader issues in not only the league embracing a political agenda, but the national sports media's ever willingness and really endless energy to full-throatedly adopt these messages with no real contention and really badgering players into accepting it. And here's a little segment from the show.
The Boston Red Sox have a 250-foot billboard with Black Lives Matter. The whole league has endorsed this. The rebel is, what was it, the San Francisco Giants pitcher?
Yes.
He's the rebel. What's it, Sam Coonrad, I think is his name? He's the rebel that said, "No, man, I'm good on this. I'm a Christian, and this group, when you look at it, is Marxist and don't think it's consistent with my Christian values. I'm not going to take this knee." That's the rebel.
And I think that point particularly goes against really the Sports Illustrated narrative and assessment of Coonrod's stance, that he was coward, that it was a sheepish, deceptive, and really cowardly act on his part. But to Whitlock's point, when you're the only person in a group acting a certain way, in contravention of every other member acting another way, that's really the courageous act. It's almost like when you see an entertainer accept an award and they give some social justice driven acceptance speech to a room full of thousands upon thousands of people who all agree with everything they're saying, and the speaker knows that they're going to agree with them before they even open their mouth, but then it's treated as some act of bravery by the national media. But when you're acting or speaking in a certain way where no one in your immediate presence and really no one after the fact is going to give you any kind of brushback, there really is no courage in doing so. It's actually a very safe play. But here, in opposition to that, Coonrad's stance in taking a stance by himself in the face of every other player on the field acting another way really is the sole act of bravery out of really everybody, at least on the field in that opening series, in the Giants opening series. Here's one more little bit of the show that I'd like to play for you guys.
For the anthem.
I think it has become brave to stand for the anthem. We saw Sports Illustrated come after him for his explanation, and they wrote a piece where they said he hid behind his religion. And again, when I talk about how secular things have become and how the whole media is like, and social media, hostile towards religion, this is what I'm talking about.
And there you see Whitlock get a little bit into the fact that there are multiple avenues of attack for Sam Coonrad here. He's not going along with the social justice and really Black Lives Matter message, which makes him public enemy number one in the eyes of the national media when speaking about Major League Baseball. But also that the specific basis that he's taking, traditional values, and really traditional values in Christianity, makes him the target and makes him an enlarged target for the national media, who is really enjoying taking every shot they can at him. Sports Illustrated and NBC Sports, certainly not a fringe outlet. And to get the ire of those two outlets is considerable brushback. So we'll see what happens with Coonrad in the future. I'm not too familiar with his career up until this point, but we'll see if there are similar actions by him in the future, if any other players take on the same actions of standing either during a BLM message or during the anthem when other players kneel, and see what their rationales are. But you can be absolutely guaranteed that the assessment of the media here, both in this video and in this little segment from Clay Travis's show, in being opposed to any real basis for standing or showing any opposition to Black Lives Matter and the social justice causes taken up by professional sports leagues, will be met with absolute vitriol from the sports media. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that going forward. But thank you all for watching. If you like the show, like what you've heard, please subscribe on YouTube, but also to the audio podcast, which this segment will be a part of, over at Fate of the Union on iTunes and Spotify. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.